Republicans held more hearings this week. We call them professional rake steppers for a reason, because once again, those hearings backfired, with even Marjorie Taylor Greene being banned from asking further questions during one of the hearing. We will show what went down. And Republicans in the House of Representatives finally announced their hostage demands for so-called spending cuts they want in order for them to raise the debt ceiling. And we're talking about some of the most extreme plans imaginable, directly targeting workers and everyday Americans. And then you have some of these MAGA Republicans saying it is not even extreme enough. I don't even think Kevin McCarthy has the votes for the plan that they rolled out. And I got to show you President Biden's response to it. It was great. Speaking of great, I think I'm pretty happy that the Second Circuit Court of Appeals did the right thing. I was nervous for a moment because they stayed or paused a lower court ruling by a Trump-appointed federal judge who rejected the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's lawsuit to basically stop MAGA Republican Jim Jordan from subpoenaing Mark Pomerantz to try to force the testimony of this former special assistant district attorney. I want to talk about what went down in the Second Circuit, what we can expect next week, and what this Trump appointee's ruling was all about. And also, speaking of great, here's the real great part that I wanted to talk about, which is E. Jean Carroll's trial is set to take place April 25th. The wait is over. That's right. E. Jean Carroll's civil rape and defamation case against Donald Trump goes to trial next week on April 25th. Trump's lawyer, Joe Tacopina, continues to get smacked down by the judge, federal judge Lewis Kaplan, and it doesn't seem like Trump is going to show up at the trial. It's a civil case, so unlike a criminal case, Trump doesn't have to show up, but Trump was begging the judge to issue an instruction to the jury to say that the reason Donald Trump didn't want to show up was because it would just be too big of a burden to the city of Manhattan. And Judge Lewis Kaplan said, no, I think it's not a burden at all. You could decide to show up or not. But you know what? I am not going to read such an instruction. And not only that, but Donald Trump, your lawyer, can't even tell the jury, why you are not here. So show up or don't show up. It is your choice. And Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, we haven't heard that name for a while, but she's been hard at work since the special purpose grand jury submitted their report, which still remains under seal. And Fani Willis's criminal investigation into Donald Trump looks like it's headed toward a criminal indictment of Donald Trump soon. I think in the next 2 or 3 months, but I think late May, early June, we're going to see the criminal indictment out of Fulton County, Georgia. I'll explain why. Also, Ron DeSantis, looking more incompetent each and every day. I mean, talk about this process exposing him. Like, he's become like the laughingstock to everybody, to Democrats, to MAGA Republicans. I think Ron DeSantis's incompetence is actually one of the things that's actually maybe uniting the country. Also, President Biden is likely to announce his re-election campaign soon. This and more here on the MeidasTouch Podcast. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Brett and Jordy. Action-packed week, fellas. And you know what? When we were last live on Monday, we did not touch on the fact that as of Monday night, the Fox Dominion case was going to trial. And so I don't want to belabor the point because we've covered it a ton on other hot takes, but we should at least mention for continuity, of course, that Fox settled the defamation case brought by Dominion and wrote a check for $787.5 million and essentially admitted that their statements were false by conceding that the judge's findings of falsity were accurate. Just wanted to put that out there.
Brett, Jordy, Ben, but just not only putting it out there, we actually talked through the exact scenario of what could have and did eventually happen.
Honestly, I have a bone to pick because I'm getting real sick of Ben being right about everything. I just want to throw that out there right at the beginning.
Agree. It's annoying. It's annoying.
It's kind of annoying. Ben breaks down the legal arguments. He says what's going to happen. Even if people aren't super thrilled about what may happen, Ben always just nails it. But I guess that's why you're here at the MeidasTouch Network, because we give it to you straight. And Ben really knows his stuff when it comes to the law. But no, Ben, that was an absolutely incredible prediction. It was tough. It sucked to see them settle. It hurt, obviously, personally, just as an American who wanted to see more accountability for Fox. But I get why they did it in terms of them being a company for their shareholders, and it's a whole lot of money. My kind of metaphor for it was it felt like the lottery winner kind of taking the lump sum or taking the lump sum up front rather than get the money kind of down the road, because the process just would have obviously been dragged out even after the trial with the appeals upon appeals upon appeals. And then at the end, it goes to another process where the final verdict could then be cut down to not too much more money than they even received by just taking the money up front. So I get why they did it. I wish that they could have forced these Fox hosts, like I said in the last show, to open up every single show by telling their audience, listen, we lied to you. But I guess that was a little too much to ask. But plenty of justice happening around the country. And by the way, Fox is it's just getting started for Fox. They got the Smartmatic lawsuit, which is like a $2.7 billion lawsuit. They have shareholder lawsuits. There's so much disarray from what we're hearing internally at Fox with their talent, with their staff. Like, they are in real chaos. So any way that organization can be at least weakened or punched in the gut, I am happy with as at least a starting point. But seeing justice all over the country, the good thing about professional rake stepping, you guys, is it's not just isolated. It's not just isolated to Congress. Like, these professional rake steppers, they step on rakes in the courts, they step on rakes in the Capitol, they step on rakes kind of wherever they go. It's kind of the one kind of uniting ideology, if you will, of these MAGA Republicans, and we are just seeing it in all aspects of
Brad, I'll tell you why. Stupidity is contagious. And so this professional rank stepping, it's a contagious thing because they all appear on each other's networks. They all talk to each other. They all influence each other in the worst ways possible. Stupidity, contagious.
I thought you were going to say cyclical. I thought you were about to come back.
No, that's different. I'll use that later. Don't worry.
All right, I got to figure out how you use that correctly. But no, it's, the truth. The truth is that when you lie about everything, it's going to catch up to you, especially when you're in legitimate places like a court of law, or when you're surrounded by intelligent people like Jamie Raskin and Eric Swalwell. Once you actually get confronted with people who are actually informed on the facts, or actually informed on what's going on, or you're under oath or something to that effect, all of a sudden your lies that you heard on your crazy right-wing blogs, they just all of a sudden they don't quite work. And so that's where they kind of go and step on those rakes, because they get into places where their lies and gaslighting all of a sudden aren't working so much anymore, but people are seeing through it.
President Biden in a recent speech, we'll show it in a little bit, called these MAGA Republicans ideas. I think he called them these wacko notions, right? And it is a kind of a combination of this wannabe fascism, this kind of cosplay authoritarianism mixed with this idiocracy and incompetence. And we should be grateful that there is this idiocracy and incompetence portion of it that is holding back their authoritarian intentions and designs. But nonetheless, they are cosplay fascism. They actually want to be full fascists, but their idiocracy holds it back. And, it's on full display when they hold these hearings, right? I mean, they hold these congressional hearings in the House of Representatives, and, you see why it is that these individuals, should not be elevated to these positions. Like, Kevin McCarthy, the weakest speaker of the House in history, puts Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Homeland Security Committee, right? I mean, I just want you to think about it. Like, this isn't a joke, right? This isn't funny stuff. The Homeland Security Committee is a group of members of Congress who have access to the most highly classified information. Okay. This is life or death stuff that they deal with. And somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who she frankly can't control herself, right? She's not fit really to hold any type of job at all in this country, except for in the MAGA Republican Party, where idiocracy and cruelty and just being evil and hateful is rewarded. She gets to be on the Homeland Security Committee. And now Kevin McCarthy puts her in a position to make life or death decisions over your life, over your family's life, over your friends and colleagues and coworkers and community and neighborhood and country, and she doesn't belong there at all. And so I just want to show you this clip to start. This is from a Homeland Security Committee meeting where Congressman Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, before becoming a Congress member, Eric Swalwell was a very well-established state prosecutor in California who prosecuted very high-profile cases for the state of California. And Eric Swalwell is just pointing out a fact that the Republican House Judiciary Twitter account posts these ridiculous things, praising Kanye West, Kanye, Elon, Trump. And so Eric Swalwell is just pointing out how harmful that is because it radicalizes domestic terrorists and extremists. And the witness there is the Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas. And so you'll see Congressman Eric Swalwell just pointing this out and just having a very intelligible conversation. I want you to watch what Marjorie Taylor Greene does. So let's play this clip.
Was kept up for months after Kanye West said that he was going to declare DEFCON 3 on the Jews. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that all of us have a responsibility to elevate our rhetoric and to denounce anti-Semitism and anti-police rhetoric in this country so that Jewish Americans and police officers can be safer?
Congressman, I do.
Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields, and now I recognize the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Green.
That was quite entertaining from someone that had a sexual relationship with a Chinese spy, and everyone knows it. But
I move to take her words down. Completely inappropriate.
And the move to take her words down is a step basically to disqualify her. And she should have been disqualified from asking further questions in that committee hearing. Based on that alone, she wasn't, but she continued to act like that. Like if someone acted like that, just think about, if you work at an accounting firm or at a school, right? Or at, a law firm or at a restaurant or wherever, or a nonprofit organization, and just somebody behaved like that, right? Like they would be fired immediately and likely sued, for harassment, because it's really despicable conduct, and there you have Congressman Swalwell talking about the importance of elevating rhetoric, right? And addressing a serious issue that the MAGA Republicans on the Judiciary Committee that maintain that official account are praising Kanye West at the same time he was saying we need to go DEFCON 3 on Jews. And he's asking the question to the Homeland Security Secretary because that's a major issue under the jurisdiction of the Homeland Security Secretary, that domestic terrorists are being radicalized by language like that coming from the House Judiciary GOP account. And then notice that Marjorie Taylor Greene, she doesn't even address what Eric Swalwell's saying. Like it's a fact. She just goes right to, well, you had sex with a spy, which is not true. Back in 2012, 2013, when Eric Swalwell was informed that there may have been an interaction with, and he may have been targeted by a Chinese spy operation, what did he do? He cooperated with the FBI immediately back in 2012 or 2013, whenever it was. It was a very long time ago. And that's what she brings up. And she brings it up like that, like Brett, to your point, like just a horrible human being.
Yeah, no, it's really disgusting. It's really beneath just the entire United States Congress and government. But this is how these Republicans have so debased the rhetoric in our country and have just turned it into just a complete and utter cesspool. I mean, it's really just frankly disgusting to have a human being like that in our government who would otherwise be completely unemployable anywhere else. You say that literally in any other job. You behave that way in any other job. You are being sent to HR at minimum, or you are being fired and you are not being hired again. And this just kept going on and on and on during this hearing, to the point where Marjorie Taylor Greene actually got banned from even speaking. Like, yeah, literally, they told her that she could no longer speak anymore during these hearings. And she tries to use these terms that she thinks. Here's the thing with these MAGA Republicans also, they don't even know what the hell they're doing, right? They don't even know the rules of their own job. And so she's in there just being, Marjorie Taylor Greene, being as rude as could be. And then she'll make a comment like, point to personal injury, and Dan Goldman responds to her. He's like, that's not a thing. Like, what are you talking about? That's not even a thing. We'll just play this clip in general. You'll see the whole sequence of events where Marjorie Taylor Greene, just starts going crazy again. I mean, not that she has to get started to go crazy, but Marjorie Taylor Greene behaving like Marjorie Taylor Greene until she is banned from speaking during this hearing.
Outrage, complete outrage, where China is poisoning America's children, poisoning our teenagers, poisoning our young people. How long are you going to let this go on?
Congresswoman, let me assure you that we're not letting it go on. We are fighting this.
No, I reclaim my time. You're a liar. You are letting this go on, and the numbers.
Well,
no, obviously.
Actually, I want you to take the words of the speaker down.
So in making a ruling on this, it's pretty clear that the rules state you can't impugn someone's character. Identifying or calling someone a liar is unacceptable in this committee. And I make the ruling that we strike those words.
Sorry, just a point of order, legitimate question.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you move to take the words down or to strike them, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, sorry, I just stepped in.
Take them down.
So
That's what we did.
Yeah.
my understanding is if words are taken down, that means that the member can no longer speak in whatever the proceeding is that those words were said.
Personal inquiry, point of personal inquiry.
There's no such thing.
Stand by just a second. House, when we strike, it does terminate the time of the individual who is speaking. So the gentlelady is no longer recognized.
And that,
that's
by the way, was
Congressman-
the chair was a Republican, Congress member Mark Green, and he had enough of it. When Congressmember Green's like, you humiliated me at this Homeland Security Committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she said point of personal inquiry, which is not even a point that you could raise there of kind of parliamentary procedure. And Congressman Dan Goldman's like, what are you talking about? But notice it actually took her calling Mayorkas, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, a liar. They didn't officially take down her words and vote to disqualify her from the hearing based on saying that Congressman Swalwell had sex with a spy. It took 2 times for that to actually happen. So that's what was going on there.
And by the way, this was a theme throughout all these. And by the way, not just these hearings, like all the hearings that there are, the theme is Republicans get their time to ask questions about really serious issues that affect America, right? Like they're holding these sham hearings, but they could actually be hearings that actually help inform the public, that actually help dig into issues that the American people care about. But they don't view those that way. They view these as these Soviet kind of trials, these BS trials to just kind of gaslight the public. And all they view this is as a platform to get themselves on Sean Hannity's show or Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham's show that night. So they spend their time, and instead of even asking questions to the witness, so they bring out a top-level official from the Biden administration or a top-level expert. They have them sitting in front of them, and all they do for the 5 minutes they're allotted or whatever it is, person by person, they just do what Marjorie Taylor Greene is, and they do their rant. You're a liar. You are a liar. Liar, liar, pants on fire. And that's what they do. There's just nothing. There's zero substance, zero even attempt to try to get to the bottom of issues that people care about. And that's what's so enraging. Also, that they could get that little hit, that little great job by Sean Hannity every night on Fox News. That's what's also just so disgusting about this. Like, if you're going to do these sham hearings, at least take them seriously. At least have the decency to pretend, but they cannot even pretend.
Yeah, like, so that hearing, Jordy, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Jordy, you're on mute, but we can't hear you.
Wow, I pulled a Brett. All I was gonna say is, one, to our audio and YouTube watchers, I actually requested that Brett does more Marjorie Taylor Greene impressions because he's so good at them. It's definitely a top 5 impression. And then, Ben, before you go, I love when Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks. I love it. I love it. I love it. I say, let Lauren Boebert speak, let Matt Gaetz speak, because Brett, Ben, to your points, they're professional rake steppers. You know who's not watching these hearings live like that? Gen Z. They're not. You know, when they do watch it, when we take their ridiculous sound bites, not Gen Z's, when we take Marjorie Taylor Greene's ridiculous sound bites and behavior, stitch it together in a 60-second clip for them to just see and on full display, hey, do you want government to run like this? Do you think this person is a fair and accurate representation of you and your ideals and what you aspire this country to be? Or do you want it to be Dan Goldman, who is a normal, pro-democracy loving person in this country who is a fantastic representative? So when you're able to juxtapose these MAGA Republicans when they're using the microphone to spew hatred and vitriol and division, and when you could show them doing that versus what Democrats are trying to do on a day-to-day basis, which is just protect people's rights, you know, the choice becomes clear and evident that these MAGA Republicans should be nowhere near government.
Couldn't agree more with you, Jordy. Look, the clips that we just played for you were from the Homeland Security Committee hearing. There's one more I just want to show you, just so you see the contrast between Marjorie Taylor Greene and the way someone like Congressman Eric Swalwell kind of calls them out. Like, you can call people out, but, you know, stick to the facts and show photographs and show the images and show the people what you're talking about. And you can do it in a calm and intelligible manner. Watch Congressman Eric Swalwell calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene and Republicans for their defund the police rhetoric. Play this clip.
I'm disturbed about a recent tweet from the former president that says Republicans in Congress should defund the Department of Justice and the FBI. I'm also concerned about people on this committee and their own anti-police rhetoric. This is a defund the FBI campaign effort. Again, thousands of FBI agents who work hard every day to take bad guys off the streets. In fact, after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, someone armed to the teeth went to an FBI field office to try and kill FBI agents.
So compare that to MAGA Republican Congress member Nick LaLota, who asks a question of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, but except it's not a question, right? Because MAGA Republican Congress member LaLota, Brett, to your point, wants to get on Fox. He thinks it's like, let's do this thing where I do a pop quiz and I'm going to ask the Homeland Security these gotcha questions. But watch how Secretary Mayorkas handles this. Play the clip.
And sir, I know that we're limited on time, so I would appreciate if when you responded, you just say A, B, C, or D in these multiple choice questions, sir. And sir, my first question is, according to CBP, how much fentanyl has CBP seized along the southwest border in FY23? And you see the answers behind me, sir.
So, Congressman, 2 quick things. Number one, my distance vision isn't what it used to be, so I can't actually see that. And number 2, I'm not taking a multiple choice test that you administer. Let me assure you of that.
Damn!
And also, once again, it's the Republicans complaining about fentanyl that was seized. That's the big gotcha. Look at all the drugs that were seized at the border. How much of this stuff was getting through when Donald Trump was president? That's what I want to know. Probably a lot, because Donald Trump, as we say on the show, his whole thing was, we don't test, we don't look at numbers. No, we don't see it. It's not happening.
We don't tell you about the spy balloons flying over. We don't tell you that stuff.
Yeah, if you don't test, it doesn't exist under the MAGA Republicans world. It's like the most insane thing. Okay, but switching gears now from the Homeland Security Committee hearing to the Oversight Committee hearing chaired by MAGA Republican James Comer. The Oversight Committee hearing focused on basically blaming President Biden for everything relating to Afghanistan, like with no historical context. like no historical context that Donald Trump was the person who ordered the troops to be withdrawn, that Donald Trump like unilaterally did it in like a 3-sentence letter, that even the military generals are like, what are you doing? That Donald Trump and Pompeo released 5,000 Taliban prisoners who became the new leadership of the Taliban. Those were the individuals who ended up taking over Afghanistan, but like without even coordinating with the Afghan government at the time. Like there wasn't even a deal. It was like, let's just negotiate directly with the Taliban and let your prisoners out. Like, you know, who really would have wanted that? It was very helpful to Vladimir Putin, but how do you not even secure any type of deal? It would just like release the prisoners. And then they don't even go back further for a historical evaluation of like, why were we in Afghanistan in the first place with George W. Bush? And so again, we call it like they acted like Biden was the reason that Americans were in Afghanistan.
Can I just say something right now also? Here's what's to me not getting enough attention with this presidency. Biden is actually our first president in decades in which we are not actually in an active war. I know a lot of people on the right act like we are actually in Ukraine right now fighting Russia. That's not happening. In fact, what did President Biden do? President Biden made it so that we were not fighting Russia. President Biden supplied Ukraine with the necessary arms and defense that they needed so that that war did not become a world war, so that that war did not come to us. And Republicans hate him for it. And Donald Trump had this plan to take our troops out of Afghanistan, and Donald Trump completely fumbled the plan. He completely sold out the Afghan government. He left them completely defenseless. He completely backed the Taliban when it happened. He left Biden in a really difficult situation, which was impossible to reverse. But at the end of the day, Biden went through with it. And I'm happy Biden did go through with the withdrawal and took our troops out of here, as messy as it may have been. That's actually a really good thing that Biden ended up doing. And for the first time, we are actually not in one of these wars. That is a big thing. And all the Republicans, all these people on the right, they try to act like, oh, the world was so safe under Trump. He didn't get us into any wars. Bullshit. That's just a lie. It's just a straight up lie. You know who didn't? Biden. That's that truth right there. Biden. It's just such a skewed thing, and all their memes, all their things, they try to make it sound like Biden is some like warmonger over here. This is the first like kind of peacetime in America. It's pretty wild, you know?
And look, the Democratic Congress members were bringing it back to the truth. So this is Congress member Jared Moskowitz, Democratic superstar,
another superstar
Congress member, from Florida, calling out Republicans for forgetting who started the Afghanistan war. And he also mentions the Trump-Taliban deals, and that why are the MAGA Republicans so focused on public urination and Hunter Biden's laptop before this hearing. Here, play the clip.
Who says it's an important topic. You know, we're 100+ days into the next Congress. And this committee thought that before we would talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal, they thought it was more important to talk about Twitter first. And not only did they think it was more important than the Afghanistan withdrawal, they thought it was more important to talk about the hiring policies of the Biden administration. They also thought it was more important to talk about a laptop that was found at Radio Shack before the Afghan withdrawal. You know, they thought it was more important to talk about the DC government and public urination before the Afghan withdrawal. And so I know this is a serious topic, but just look at the hearings we've had before this one. And so it's tough for us on this side of the aisle to accept that this isn't a serious hearing. This was a 20-year war. It was started by President Bush. You remember President Bush? I know many of you have disowned him because he disagrees with President Trump.
Such a good line.
But 4 presidents, 20 years of good decisions, 20 years of bad decisions. You don't want to examine 20 years. You only want to examine, like, the last week. You know, when marriages dissolve after 20 years and they get in front of a judge, they don't just say, you know, everything was great until the last week of marriage. It's crazy. President Trump invited the Taliban to Camp David around the anniversary of 9/11. What? Like, are there any questions about that? Trump released 5,000 prisoners, many that included terrorists, 5,000 Taliban prisoners, many that included terrorists.
I like he goes, Donald Trump invited the Taliban to Camp David on the anniversary of 9/11. What? No one wants to ask questions about that. The MAGA Republicans, that doesn't intrigue you. You don't want to do maybe a follow up on why that happened. But it just goes to show you, Brett, as you said, it's all BS.
The future of the Democratic Party is bright.
Classic Moskowitz W right there, Jay. Classic Moskowitz W. He's really good. I mean, he's been bringing the heat in all these hearings. He comes completely prepared. But, that's what I was saying. Like, you could reasonably have an important discussion and fact-finding mission about what happened in Afghanistan, what went wrong, do a report on the past 20 years, how it started, why we were there, how things could have been better. Should we have even been there at all? I mean, like, you could have done a whole thing. The problem is it would have put placed the problems at the feet of the Republicans every single step of the way. And so they don't want to find the truth. They just want to use these to try to blame Biden and get their 2 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever on Fox. That's all that this is about.
Should this be the symbol every time Moskowitz gets a W? It's like boom, boom.
I'm not
boom,
sure you
boom.
know what a W goes up, but
yeah. Moskowitz W.
Oh, I see.
What I'm doing?
I see what you're doing. Here, Jordy's
Yeah.
doing his hands down in an M and then up to a W. Moskowitz. I see that. Okay.
We got a lot. Love you, brother. We've got a lot. We've got a lot to talk about, including Donald Trump does not want to show up at trial next week. Donald Trump's going to trial next week on E. Jean Carroll's rape case. Donald Trump does not want to show up. The federal judge is basically saying, can you stop whining? And Donald Trump's lawyer, can you pay attention to what I'm already ordering before? And can you stop filing these like ridiculous letter briefs and actually pay attention? Takapina, also a big ruling by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals staying a lower court order that would have compelled Mark Pomerantz to have to testify before MAGA Republican Jim Jordan's controlled Judiciary Committee. Let's also talk about what these Republican hostage demands are. They're refusing to pass a clean debt ceiling bill, and they've just rolled out like a horrific set of demands, which are complete non-starters and also just like very, very cruel, and they make no sense. We'll talk about this right after this quick break.
Now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Mosh. As the years progress, it's so important to stay on top of your mental health and fitness. Frankly, life, it gets busy, and sometimes you end up sacrificing good foods and snacks for unhealthy ones strictly because they may seem more convenient. Now, whether at the gym, on the go, or between meals with the fam, Mosh protein bars are the smart snack to keep your brain and body fit, fueled, and feeling good. With 6 delicious flavors, each Mosh bar comes packed with 12 grams of protein and made with ingredients that support brain health, like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. At 160 calories and only 1 gram of sugar, Mosh protein bars are the guilt-free snack your brain and body will crave. Your brain, it's your number one tool, which is why Mosh protein bars were mindfully formulated by some of the world's top neuroscientists and functional nutritionists. Founded by Patrick Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver, Mosh is a mission-driven brain health and wellness company that donates a portion of all proceeds to support women's brain research through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement at Cleveland Clinic. I absolutely love Mosh protein bars. They're delicious, they're savory, they're the perfect smart snack to keep your brain and body fit, fueled, and feeling good. We're constantly doing different videos or podcasts here or just a bunch of different tasks. So I'm able to enjoy Mosh protein bars easily and enjoyably throughout the day whenever I need it. Don't settle with a mediocre snack when you can nourish your body and mind with the fuel it needs to succeed. So whether you're at the gym, on the go, or just living your best life, Mosh protein bars will keep your brain and body fit, fueled, and feeling good. Head to moshlife.com/Meidas to save 20% off plus free shipping on your first 6-count trial pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on your first 6-count trial pack, which includes all 6 mouth-watering flavors. MOSHLIFE.com/Meidas.
Mosh.
Hold up.
Mosh,
Hold up. These things are ridiculous.
Yeah, they're
like,
good.
if you're listening right now, moshlife.com/Meidas, hit it up immediately. They're amazing. I'm not steering you wrong.
They're
That's a
good.
must.
Look, let's get. I couldn't agree more with you, Brett and Jordy, and I like the way you said it. Mosh.
Mosh.
All right. So when it comes to passing a bill to raise the debt ceiling, it's supposed to pretty much be automatic, right? I mean, during the Trump administration, Democrats absolutely, and for good reason, like completely disagreed with Donald Trump's priorities for what that budget looked like. But Democrats were not going to play games when it came to raising the debt ceiling. And so when Democrats control the House of Representatives, where spending starts, you raise the debt ceiling. It's just what you do, because it's not about dealing with spending priorities going forward. Raising the debt ceiling is all about paying the debt that has accumulated in the past throughout America's history. By the way, 25% of all of the debt in United States American history was created while Trump was president. So this is just about paying bills that are owed. And, look, it's a ridiculous process that, it's about 100 years old at this point, that you have to keep passing debt ceiling bills to kind of raise the debt ceiling. Like, there shouldn't even have to exist in the first place, but you have to keep it's stupid, but you got to keep raising it to the next level just to pay your bills in the past, right? There's different forums to have discussions over spending, right? Like when budgets are put forward, you could have disagreements about budgeting, and the Appropriations Committee and the Ways and Means Committee could have all these conversations about the finances. Like, there's a whole nother conversation there. But this is like the first time in history where MAGA Republicans have said, or where anyone in the House of Representatives, just so happens to be MAGA Republicans, said, we're not going to pass a clean debt ceiling bill. Like, we're just not. We need you, Biden, to follow our demands. You need to meet our demands about spending cuts, even though they're two separate concepts, totally. But we need your agreement to change your spending habits based on the way we want it. Or guess what? We destroy America. I mean, it's basically like that. We will it's basically like that.
And right. Ben, I'll extend it. Not just we'll destroy America, we'll destroy the global economy. Because if America's economy goes, the whole world is gone.
Yeah, we'll destroy the global economy. We don't want to have the normal discussions when they normally take place about spending. And, and there are issues there, right, where there are government shutdowns and all the stuff that happens with spending fights that take place. But they're like, no. We are not going to raise the debt ceiling. We will cause America to default on its debt if you don't agree with us. America's full faith and credit will be absolutely destroyed, and we will plunge the entire world into a global depression if you don't agree to these demands. And President Biden's like, no. But how about this? Show me your budget. Well, they're refusing to show a budget, right? But they've at least showed their demands now, Brett. And Brett, can you go over what these demands are? Because if you go over them point by point, like, these demands are cruel, they're impractical, and even when you lay them out, other MAGA Republicans are like, these don't go far enough. These aren't extreme enough. So it doesn't even seem like Kevin McCarthy has the votes. But to be clear, Kevin McCarthy has not put forward his own budget. Just here's what you need to cut, basically. And what are the cuts, Brett?
Yeah, it's comically evil, like movie villain, super villain evil, the cuts that they want, because they knew that they couldn't directly come for Social Security and Medicare because Biden humiliated them at the State of the Union and called them out on it. So they said, okay, we're going to go after all the Americans who need help. We're going to target them in every other way imaginable. And I'm going to read you a list. This is straight from the Kevin McCarthy plan to avert the debt ceiling. He wants to eliminate Pell Grants for 80,000 students and reduce grant funding for millions of others. He wants to remove access to Head Start programs and childcare to 300,000 children. He wants to cut funding for 2,000 border agents. I thought they wanted to protect the border. They wants to cut 11,000 FBI personnel, hundreds of police. He wants to shut down 125 air traffic control towers. I mean, that right there would increase airport security wait times like crazy. It would be an absolute disaster. He wants to evict hundreds of thousands of families, veterans, seniors, people with disabilities from Section 8 housing. He wants to impose work requirements payments for social programs. He wants to block the Biden student debt relief plan. I'm not done yet. I'm still going. He wants to repeal the money that the IRS has, and we'll get to that in a second. He wants to remove all of Biden's environmental protections and nearly wipe out all of Biden's clean tax credits. He wants to reduce access to veterans care. He wants to increase wait times for veterans receiving benefits because he wants to put in a 22% decrease in VA funding. And I could keep going on and on and on. That list right there is a pretty rough start to this plan. And the place where McCarthy is finding himself now in is the so-called more moderate members of the House are saying it's a little too extreme. The extremist members of the House are saying, hell no, I'm not voting for that. It's not nearly extreme enough. And McCarthy, because the brilliant politician, tactician that he is, he has to listen to people like George Santos and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lou and all these bozos. And George Santos came out and he said, I'm strongly against this bill, Kevin McCarthy. I'm strongly against it because it's not mean enough. It's not extreme enough. He's got to listen to George frickin' Santos. I mean, how humiliating is that? You have Matt Gaetz, you got these House Freedom Caucus members. They say, you know what? It's actually not difficult enough for lower income Americans to receive Medicaid. We need to make it actually even harder for them to receive Medicaid, for me to even think about voting for this. And then they also go, you know what, those SNAP benefits, which provides the food aid to qualified recipients, we need to make those also way more difficult for people to get. That should be way harder to get if you need SNAP benefits. This makes it far too easy for Kevin McCarthy's plan. And so that's where Kevin McCarthy finds himself in. It looks like he doesn't have even anywhere near the votes to even pass this in his own Republican House of Representatives. It's completely insane. It's completely cruel. It's totally unprecedented. And it just shows you how weak he is. It shows you how craven he is. It shows you how truly evil these MAGA Republicans truly can be when, listen, what do you see? What do you not see in there? You do not see, you know what, maybe wealthy people could pay their fair share a little bit. Maybe billionaires could pay a little more into the economy to help out. No, every single thing that they target is to make low-income Americans, all the Americans who need help the most, it's to make them struggle more. It's to put the burden on them. Meanwhile, Biden's budget cuts the deficit by trillions of dollars. It's like a very reasonable, responsible budget that anybody could look at and go, yeah, these are all reasonable things to ask for. But once again, this isn't even about a budget in general. It's a separate conversation entirely. It's about paying your bills, and Kevin McCarthy does not want to pay his damn bills.
Brett, I think you said it perfectly there too when you said it's cruel, it's humane, but you know what it also is? It's on brand.
Inhumane.
That's what I meant. It's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's on brand for this MAGA Republican Party. I think we've said this before in the show. The Kevin McCarthys, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the George Santoses, they don't want the country to succeed. They really don't. Their goal right now as congresspeople, as elected officials, is actually to derail any sort of progress that the Biden administration can make because they think ultimately it will benefit them come 2024. They want to tank the economy. They want to make lives harder for the average American, and they're going to hide behind whatever fake sort of cloak themselves in the flagness that they like to pretend to do and pretend to be patriots and this, that, and the third. They hate this country. They really do, and it's the saddest thing to play out in lifetime.
Here's honestly, they want to help their billionaire donors and friends. That's what they want. They want the wealthy to succeed, and they don't give a damn what happens to the rest of Americans. And when you look at a lot of these states in the country, the income inequality, the disparities in income are just exploding throughout the country in general, but especially in these red states. And that's why you see these red states also starting to strip away even more rights of their citizens. And they're stripping away all these child labor laws. They're putting 13-year-olds to work because these are the kinds of societies that Republicans want to create. What they are doing when they have supermajorities in these Republican states is what these Republicans in the House want to do nationally. And let me just give you an example. I said I'd mention it of the government actually working, of why actually funding the government programs actually help. So the data came in about the IRS funding. And with that in IRA funding, the Inflation Reduction Act funding, the IRS was able to provide 87% of customer calls this season with live support. That was an increase from 15% last year. And the average time on hold, so you trying to get in touch with an IRS agent to get some help with your taxes, decreased from 27 minutes to just 4. And that's because they had more support staff to actually help the average American do their taxes and get their tax returns in a speedy way. That's what Republicans positioned to their voters and gaslit Americans as, oh, look, these 87,000 jackbooted thug IRS agents are going to kick down your doors with weapons and they're going to kill you. I mean, these are the things that they were flooding people's inboxes with stuff. And guess what? It helped people because when these agencies are funded and are able to work, they're actually designed to help Americans, and Republicans just want to destroy government. They view all government as evil and they want to burn it all down. But I think meanwhile, they gaslight their people. Like if you ask a lot of these Republican voters, by the way, they'll be like, what do you mean? I thought they got rid of the IRS agents, because they just pretend like they pass bills out of committee or pass bills in the House of Representatives that actually don't ever get signed. And then they just spike the football and say, we did it, and moved on, even though that's not a thing that happened.
One of the tactics of authoritarianism is not to elevate people, right? It's to make people suffer a ton. And then if you give the people just breadcrumbs, right? And little you trickle down just some breadcrumbs to them, you hope that they think that, oh, you're just this benevolent authoritarian, right? America was always very different, right? America always kind of bucked that trend by focusing on the middle class, by focusing on workers, by focusing on a meritocracy. And if you just look at these laboratories of autocracy, what's going on in these red states, their plan, cruelty is the goal, right? That is the objective. And you may go, well, why is that? Because it's just a common tactic of an authoritarian, like similar to the way, and it's psychological, it's a pathological authoritarian tactic, right? Authoritarians of the past, authoritarian style leaders, when there have been other kind of global illnesses and kind of rampant diseases in countries, where they would have a dictator, the dictator wouldn't acknowledge that the virus or the illness actually exists, right? And you would just say, what are you talking about? That's not a real thing. Or then you would blame a marginalized group for it. It's just exactly the same pathology that's being used in these laboratories of autocracy in these red states. It's a playbook of authoritarianism because it is pathological as well. I mean, if you look at what Republican states are doing right now, total chaos. We're talking about firearm deaths are surging in red states. We're talking about deaths from preventable diseases, maternal mortality, infant mortality are all way up. Life expectancy in red states is plummeting. We're talking about life expectancy in some southern red states of 62, 63, compared to blue states of mid to high 80s. Just think about those stats right there alone. These MAGA Republican red states have these abortion bans. They're targeting birth control. Corruption amongst the political elites in these states is running rampant. Laws are being passed across the country in these red states to erase LGBTQ rights and the community in general, their very existence, abolishing books. If you look at what's going on in red states, it mirrors what takes place actually in authoritarian countries. It is, and then they have the same tactic that's used in the authoritarian country, right? In North Korea, what does Kim Jong-un say about South Korea? What does Kim Jong-un say about America? Oh, we have it perfect here in North Korea. America's a shithole. South Korea is a shithole. You don't want to go even see. They make their people suffer, right? Exactly what MAGA Republicans say about places like New York and California, right? I'm giving you stats. I'm giving you data, but I would never go to a great American state just because it's represented by a Republican and say that state's a shit state. That state is disgusting. States have a beauty to them. I'll give you the data, but it's exactly the Kim Jong-un style authoritarian tactic to basically say the other New York City, I went there. Marjorie Taylor Greene just lies. Like, you can take Marjorie Taylor Greene's rhetoric and look at Kim Jong-un's lies and rhetoric, and they're very similar. She goes, I went there and all the people in New York, they all looked drugged out and they had these zombie eyes and it stunk and I saw the people suffering. And it's like, meanwhile, you want to look what's happening near your district, Marjorie Taylor Greene? You want to look what's happening right next to in Jim Jordan's district in the city there, where they literally call it Danger City? You want to look what's happening in
Danger City. Danger City. Killing County.
City. Yeah. You want Kevin McCarthy's district is called Killing County? I mean, it's actually called Killing County's Kevin McCarthy's district. Jim Jordan's is called Danger City because of the deaths and the statistical, the police shooting deaths and the violent crime rates and rampant drugs that are taking place there. It is all complete projection. But I do want to show you what President Biden said, though, because let's go back from team crazy to normal for a second here. And this is what President Biden said about the MAGA Republicans who have introduced these, truly kind of wacko concepts. And I think Biden says these are wacko notions that they're trying to hold the nation hostage if I don't pass. I'm not going to do that. Play this clip of President Biden.
Here's what's really dangerous. MAGA Republican in Congress are threatening to default on the national debt. The debt that took 230 years to accumulate overall, unless we do what they say. They say they're going to default unless I agree to all these wacko notions they have. Default would be worse than totally irresponsible. It would mean cuts in Social Security and Medicare, higher interest rates for things like credit cards, car loans, mortgages. Working people, middle class, seniors would pay the price for the entire economy would be at risk. America's never defaulted on our debt, which has accumulated over 200 years. Let's remember, the last administration alone increased the national debt by 40% in 4 years, yet every single year they passed the debt limit. Every single year.
And here, President Biden, and I love his messaging. He goes, maybe MAGA Republicans want to run things like a deadbeat nation, but America is not a deadbeat nation. Play this clip.
America is not a deadbeat nation. We meet our obligations. And I made clear to Speaker McCarthy about how we should proceed to settle our differences. No one should do anything to jeopardize the full faith and credit of the United States of America. Instead, I'm making threats of default if I don't go along with what they want, which would be catastrophic to the country. If we don't do it, they say they're going to let default take place. Take default off the table. And let's have a real serious, detailed conversation about how to grow the economy, lower costs, and reduce the deficit.
And President Biden saying, look, you want to have a conversation on spending. I'm happy to have a conversation with spending. We can do it transparently. We can let's make it a very kind of rigorous conversation. I'm all down for that. But do not threaten me. Do not threaten America. Do not turn America into a deadbeat nation in order for us to have a discussion on spending. And that's actually how you negotiate right there. You got to take their hostage threats off the table and say, no, that's a non-freaking starter. And by the way, President Biden also used Trump's words against him, where Donald Trump said that I can't imagine anybody using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge. Play Biden first, then I want to show Trump saying it.
Donald Trump seeking to increase the debt limit while he was doing what he was doing. He said, quote, I can't imagine anybody ever even thinking about using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge. I guess he didn't know the new MAGA Republicans he bred.
The new MAGA Republicans he bred. The language that he's using is so spot on. And that's what we talk about here on the MeidasTouch Network all the time and on this podcast, right? This is no longer, well, on the one side, we got Democrats who are progressives and liberals. And on the other side, we have Republicans, and they are various gradations of conservative. That's not what exists right now, right? You have a pro-democracy coalition, which is represented by the only political party that supports democracy today, only major political party that supports democracy today, and that is the Democratic Party, made up of progressives, liberals, independents, people not affiliated with political parties, people who are actually conservative and not this MAGA weird blend of fascism, where we can have disagreements, intelligible conversations. We could challenge each other, but we love our Constitution. We love our country. We want to have intelligent conversations. We want to elect adults. We don't want to elect people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump, because we're like, hey, we're not going to give those people control over life and death matters of ourselves and our family and friends and colleagues and coworkers. And on the other hand, you got these MAGA Republicans, authoritarian fascists. That's who they are. And so the divide is clear. I know the media wants to, Democrats, liberal, conservative, on the other side, conservatives. Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't conservative, right? She's out of her mind. She's like a MAGA fascist. There's nothing conservative about those ideas. And if we can now play the clip of Donald Trump actually saying exactly, Biden's got the receipts. So play this clip of Trump.
I can't imagine anybody ever even thinking of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge. When I first came into office, I asked about the debt ceiling, and I understand debt ceilings, and I certainly understand the highest rated credit ever in history and a debt ceiling. And I said, I remember to Senator Schumer and to Nancy Pelosi, would anybody ever use that to negotiate with? They said, absolutely not. That's a sacred element of our country. They can't use the debt ceiling to negotiate.
And that's exactly what they are doing. Frankly, encouraged by Trump. Trump is the one also giving the orders to Kevin McCarthy to use the debt ceiling to hold the nation hostage. And you have to ask yourself, Jordy, it's to your point. So what's the end? And Occam's razor, the easiest explanation, the simplest explanation, they want to destroy the country. Exactly. Why else would you engage in such maniacally evil conduct? As Biden said, you can raise the debt ceiling and then we could have a conversation about spending. But they go, no, we're going to send this whole thing into default. Why? Why would you do that? What reason do you want to so harm our country and hurt our people? But Brett, I think there's some big news you've learned today about Biden potentially announcing re-election next week.
I did, but I got to say that Trump clip, it's the most Trumpy clip on the planet. Like first, okay, he says his point at the beginning, right? And then there's no way that conversation happened with Pelosi and Schumer. Can we agree that didn't happen? It's not something that they
You mean they weren't crying as they were speaking with him either?
Yeah. And then he's like,
tears in their eyes,
Brett, they said, sir.
and then he's like, the debt ceiling. I know. He's like, the debt ceiling. I know debt ceilings. Good. Debt ceilings are good. I know debt ceilings. Debt ceilings. Yes, debt ceilings. He just like repeats himself and fumbles over his words. And you're like, what are you talking? You have no idea what you're talking about. But those are some good receipts. But yes, we are learning today through a Washington Post report that Biden is preparing to announce his re-election campaign for the 2024 election next week, as early as Tuesday. Apparently, Biden and his aides have a video that they are prepping for the announcement. They're targeting a Tuesday release for this announcement video, and they're trying to have it coincide with the 4-year anniversary of the 2020 campaign launch. So some massive news there. Personally, I am very excited about another Biden election. I think he's been doing a great job. I think he's an incredibly strong incumbent. I think that Biden is really good at, as we just saw in those clips, at contrasting kind of somebody with a steady hand, somebody who's a statesman who knows the ins and outs of government and politics, somebody who actually knows how to lead in a calm, competent manner against these just deranged new breed of these MAGA Republicans who have completely co-opted the Republican Party. I think that contrast is very important, not to mention that he is objectively, whether you like it or not, objectively one of the most consequential presidents in the history, at least the modern history of the United States of America, in terms of legislation passed, in terms of success on the global stage, in terms of getting our troops out of Afghanistan, which I actually think is a positive thing that he did. I think Biden has done a lot of good when he was handed a situation that was dire. He was handed a situation where we were losing just tons of jobs, where thousands thousands of people were dying every single day. COVID was running rampant. I mean, there was a time where we couldn't actually go to the store and find toilet paper on the shelves. We couldn't go to the store and buy more than one or two of a product because everything was rationed across the country. You had to buy like groceries like off market at random places because they didn't sell them they didn't have them in stock at grocery stores. Like, I don't think people remember just how bad things were, not to mention the disastrous transition, the non-existent transition that happened where Trump just gave up at the end of his presidency and did not even help a little bit, as all presidents did. And I think Biden has done an incredible job. You know, I'm all for this reelection campaign. I think he'll do a great job. And
do not let the mainstream, not even the main, do not let the legacy media gaslight you into thinking this is anything but a fantastic decision by the Biden administration, by President Biden for his reelection campaign. Don't let them. He's been successful. He's been stable. He's kicked ass. This is exactly the person that we all voted for, and the leadership speaks for itself. The results speak for itself. We're once again a country that's respected around the world because we have a leader that's competent, stable, and getting things done.
And I should note just quickly where Biden was giving the speech from, because I think it speaks a lot to his messaging also, not just what he's saying, but the kinds of places he's going to. He gave that speech from a union training facility in Michigan. I mean, contrast that also with McCarthy's speech, when McCarthy gave his speech threatening to hold the entire economy hostage. Where did McCarthy give his speech? Did he give it in front of union workers? No. He went to the New York Stock Exchange to give it in front of Wall Street. I mean, I like that right there. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Who do you represent? Oh, you just told us.
Oh, and Ben, real quick before we kick it back to you, I mean, just how funny and amazing is it going to be when Biden beats Trump again? I mean, it's just going to be hilarious and amazing.
I hope he breaks out the beat him like a drum line again.
Oh,
beat him like a drum.
And I'll say this:
classic.
I don't agree with President Biden on everything that he does, but you know, I know that there is a normal adult in the room who is doing everything in his power to try to protect our nation, to put forward policies that help most Americans, you know, and workers, and focusing on jobs and things like lowering prescription drug prices, and focusing on making healthcare accessible and affordable, making education accessible and affordable, focusing on things like equality, right? Focusing on making sure women can have control over their own bodies. And, you know, MAGA Republicans are, you know, using big government. They're weaponizing government to try to control the bodies of women, to tell you who you can marry. And then they spend their whole days talking about woke, Mr. Potato Head this, and the green M&M that, and you know, and whichever movie gets them angry because a character is too woke, and they're going on a battle against the woke. And it's just like, boy, headache. You're just giving me a headache. Like, stop with the freaking nonsense, and like, let's be serious. And so I do want to talk about Ron DeSantis, because he goes out there. It's like the cringiest, headache-inducing thing when he does these speeches, you know, and his state is suffering. Like, let's be real. What's going on there? Like, there are so many areas where he's just been completely negligent regarding his state. You know, I think I was telling you this the other day, Brett. I'm like, look, if you can at least maybe do like, maybe focus on like the bare minimum, like to the people like Greg Abbott and DeSantis, like, can you try to at least keep the lights on and like allow people just to go about their day to day? Like they're so cocky that they just go to woke, and they don't even focus on like the basic bare minimum function of like what their job duties are as a governor, of like what you're supposed to do. And then they go right to woke. Here we're talking about the woke. I'm battling the woke in the schools. And it's like, yo, can you make sure that our lights work and that our electricity is working, please? Like, can you make sure that like we have, you know, gas? Like, can you focus on some of the most basic things? So I want to talk about Ron DeSantis, and everyone's piling up on him, and rightfully so. And I want to talk about some updates in the various Trump related cases, but let's just take one more quick break.
Oh, hey, when did you get here? Let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Henson Shaving.
Look, everyone knows how annoying cheap razors are. The cuts, the irritation, the frustration. And don't get me started with subscription razor services, the headaches that those can cause. That's why you gotta meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS. That's the International Space Station and Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. Razor blades, they're like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave, it isn't a blade problem. It's an extension problem. By using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. It gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no obsolescence. The Henson razor, it works with standard dual-edge blades to give you that old-school shave with the benefit of new-school tech. Once you own the Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. My first shave with the Henson razor was incredibly refreshing. The design is sleek and the durability is top notch. The Henson razor is truly much better than your run-of-the-mill quote-unquote traditional razor brand. And the affordability factor is absolutely game-changing. No more wasting your money on expensive blades. With Henson Shaving, you get a year of blades for just $5. Okay, so here's what you have to do. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Meidas to pick the razor for you and use code Meidas and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/Meidas and use code Meidas. And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Lomi. Now, I've never been able to compost before. It was always too complicated, too much work, and frankly, I don't think I even knew exactly if I was doing it right. Then I got a Lomi. Lomi allows me to turn my food scraps into dirt with just the push of a button. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns scraps to dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs, and it's really quiet. Thanks to Lomi, I have way less garbage each week. My family, we're down from 3 bags per week to just 1. And here's something pretty cool. My wife, she recently started gardening, and we've been able to use the dirt that Lomi produces to help fill the garden. And since I got my Lomi, I throw out way less garbage. That means it's not going to landfills and producing methane. Instead, I turn my waste into nutrient-rich dirt that I can feed to my plants. I feel so great knowing that I'm composting and creating soil instead of waste. And I have basically a limitless supply of dirt for my garden. The other week I had my in-laws over for dinner and the food cleanup process was such a breeze. Plus, they all think I'm super eco-conscious now. If you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/Meidas and use the promo code Meidas to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/Meidas and use promo code Meidas at checkout. Food waste is gross. Let Lomi save you a cold trip out to the garbage can.
Let's go.
Let's go,
If you're
Jordy.
interested in any of these sponsors, check the description below. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're watching, or if you're listening on audio, all the links are right there. Click it, and thank you for supporting us.
A lot of updates in the courts to report. First one I'll talk about is Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell put out an offer, and his offer was if anybody can prove that the election data he was using was false, he said that he would give them $5 million, and he had a whole process about how you had to disprove him. Well, he was easily demonstrated that the data that he had was false, and then he refused to pay the $5 million. And so the
Come
the
on.
group of people who proved that he was wrong about his election data and he was using just a completely false set of election data, they brought a lawsuit against him, and in an arbitration proceeding, they were awarded $5 million. And Mike Lindell, of course, says, "I'm not going to pay you." And he goes, "It's going to be decided in court." Well, it was. It was decided. It was decided. It was decided in an arbitration, and an arbitration ruling will get affirmed in court. But Mike Lindell is going to owe $5 million because he made this ridiculous game or bet or competition, if you will, and it was easily demonstrated that he was using false information. Want to talk about what's going on in Fulton County, Georgia, right? We haven't heard a lot about what's been going on with Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney's ongoing criminal investigation into Donald Trump's 2020 election interference since we last heard. Remember, there was a special purpose grand jury that issued a report making recommendations about people who should be indicted. It's confidential, so we don't specifically know who the people are. We believe it's the fake electors, 16 fake electors, as well as Donald Trump and others in Trump's inner circle. But the way it works in Georgia, it's like a two-step process if you elect to go through the special purpose grand jury. So unlike Manhattan, right, where you just go to the grand jury and they vote to indict, in Fulton County, Georgia, first if you elect to go through this process, first a special purpose grand jury, they make recommendations. Then you bring those recommendations to a grand jury. So one of the ways I am able to make these predictions is I just follow the procedures, Jordy, that takes place. And so the grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia meets in May. So they'll get those recommendations handed to them, and then they may have other witnesses go before the grand jury, but they can basically take judicial notice of those recommendations and indict just based on the recommendations, or they can call in other witnesses, right? So what's going on in this month or so period between the special purpose grand jury report and the grand jury? Well, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, she's very smart, right? So she's using that time frame to basically go to the fake electors, who a lot of them are going to be criminally indicted, and say, "You sure? You sure this is the way you want to do it? Because I mean business, but you can make that call on yourself." And what's being reported is that a lot of those fake electors, who are some prominent Republicans, they're turning on each other and they're saying, "I wasn't involved in this. It was this person's fault. It was that person's fault." And they're pointing fingers at each other. Now, the problem is that they're all represented by the same exact lawyer, this MAGA Republican lawyer who's kind of representing them all. Why is that a problem? Because what at least Fani Willis is saying is that the lawyer is kind of coordinating them to not flip on each other when they want to flip on each other. And in addition, Fani Willis has offered some of them immunity deals if they testify against each other. And you may go, none of them should get immunity. Well, the reality is that is a strategy used if you give some immunity to testify against each other. This way you can actually get these criminal indictments and successfully prosecute them. So it's a strategy used by prosecutors that's being deployed here. But one of the things that Fani Willis says is that the offer by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to give some of these fake electors immunity has not even been conveyed to some of these fake electors by the lawyer. And how do they know that? Well, when they would, according to Fani Willis, when they would interview some of the fake electors over the past few weeks, and they would say, "Hey, so we offered you immunity, right? And you turned it down." Some of these fake electors said, "I never knew that. I would have taken it." And so Fani Willis filed a motion with Judge McBurney and said, "Hey, here's what's going on. They're flipping on each other. This lawyer is completely conflicted and should not be representing, all 10 of these fake electors. There's a total of 16 fake electors, but should not be representing these fake electors." So there was this disqualification motion that was filed. Judge McBurney hasn't ruled yet, but we learned about all of those proceedings taking place that I just talked about. So what happens next? Judge McBurney will rule on that disqualification motion. So as soon as we know the ruling there, I'll let you know. But the grand jury will meet in May. They'll deliberate probably for a few weeks. And so I think you see a late May to mid-June indictment of Donald Trump. And I think people like Giuliani, I think perhaps people like Mark Meadows, certainly the fake electors, but I think you're going to, like what we talked about happening in New York so far, what's about to go down in Georgia is going to kind of make New York kind of look like a footnote.
Yeah, so every few months, Republicans are just going to take field trips to various cities. Is Jim Jordan going to be in Atlanta in a few months? Is that what we could all expect? I mean,
yes,
probably.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's the dumbest thing because you could predict these people, right? It's just gonna be this cycle.
And that's where there's that's where their stupidity is cyclical. I told you I'd get that in this episode.
Great job, Jordy. Always, you got to fit it into every episode at least once, right? How screwed is this attorney? Honestly, like it seems like a pretty faux pas, to put it nicely. Pretty big faux pas, but it seems pretty messed up to.
The lawyer's being accused of being unethical and having what's called an unwaivable conflict of interest, right? What the lawyer argued before is that, look, I represent at one time it was 11, and then the court said you can't represent this one and these 10 because there's a conflict. So they separated it out, but she was able to still represent the 10. But what the lawyer said is, look, all of my clients signed what's called a conflict waiver, where they knowingly and intelligibly waived the conflict of interest. But what Fani Willis says is there are certain things called unwaivable conflicts of interest. So when the parties are directly adverse in the same manner, which it is now, the parties can't waive that conflict of interest. So, look, what do we say MAGA stands for? Make attorneys get attorneys. And we repeatedly see lawyers finding themselves in these ethical binds. The reality here is I don't think this lawyer is ultimately going to be in jeopardy of like losing her legal license. But I do think that there is a conflict of interest. She is going to be disqualified, I think. But, we'll see. Like Fani Willis is no nonsense. So, will Fani Willis view that conduct as obstruction of justice? Like, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think Fani Willis wants to get distracted, frankly, with that sideshow. Yeah. Like she's got her case. That's why I think the lawyer may kind of get away with it a little bit, just because you can't fight these wars on all these different fronts. And Fani Willis is very specifically focused on 2020 election interference. But, Brett, I think that this lawyer does have to justify how this took place, if indeed that's what took place, and her clients are going in saying these offers were never conveyed to us. I mean, that is very, very serious. It is an ethical violation if that's what took place. Lawyers can lose their license for that. We'll see what happens here, and we'll keep everybody posted. Brett, you mentioned, so is Jim Jordan, MAGA Republican Jim Jordan, he's going to go to Fulton County? Yeah. And so, Jim Jordan issued a subpoena. Yeah, Jim Jordan's been, constantly interfering with Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal investigation. And then that became a criminal case when the grand jury voted to indict Donald Trump. And now that it's a criminal case, what is Jim Jordan doing? He's subpoenaing people who work at the Manhattan District Attorney's office. And the most imminent subpoena was that of Mark Pomerantz, a former special assistant in the district attorney's office who was hired by Cy Vance. And Pomerantz believed, by the way, that Donald Trump should be prosecuted immediately for financial fraud crimes, the bigger crimes. So even if Pomerantz were to actually testify before this House Judiciary Committee, it's not like Pomerantz is going to provide exculpatory information for Trump. Like Pomerantz is going to say, my beef was that I thought that Trump was guilty of the bigger crimes, and I wanted that to go first. And I resigned, and I was pissed because Alvin Bragg wanted the falsification of business records to go first. So that's, at the end of the day, if you play this all out and Pomerantz finally testifies, it's not like Pomerantz is going to say, I don't think Trump did it. He's going to say, no, Trump is way more guilty than the falsification case. And the beef that he had with Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg was really about sequencing, right? Alvin Bragg was like, look, I'm not ready to bring the bigger financial fraud case yet. I want to wait for more evidence. So what evidence would he be waiting for? Well, how about the fact that Donald Trump was just deposed by the Attorney General in her civil case for the civil version of a lawsuit relating to Donald Trump engaging in those financial fraud. So now Alvin Bragg, by waiting and sequencing it the way he wanted to, now has access to Donald Trump's deposition, which would not have happened if you sequenced it the way Mark Pomerantz wanted it, because Donald Trump would have just invoked his Fifth Amendment right, and that would have stayed or stopped the Attorney General's civil case. So it was actually a brilliant sequencing. But the whole dispute that Bragg had with Pomerantz is Bragg was like, look, I want a corporation first, get my 17 felony convictions against the Trump organization. Next, falsification of business records for the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Then I'm going to continue my criminal investigation on financial fraud. Pomerantz got pissed at that and was like, no, financial fraud now. And then Pomerantz wrote a book about it, which frankly isn't helpful, because by Pomerantz writing a book, now Jim Jordan's able to argue, well, you wrote a book about it, so now you can't testify. And so that puts the Manhattan District Attorney in the position to say, we didn't authorize the book. And by writing that book, that potentially could be a violation of grand jury secrecy laws, and that could be a misdemeanor. So by writing that book and doing that press tour, I think Pomerantz, even though at the time he thought that that was like the right move, I think at least what we now know, I think it's indisputable that Pomerantz kind of didn't have the best strategy there.
I gotta say,
strategy made way more sense.
I gotta say, in watching Pomerantz and the actions that he's taken since leaving the prosecution here and writing the book and kind of going public and doing these interviews, I think to me, at least, it affirms Alvin Bragg's decision, and it affirms his whole kind of legal process here and all the steps that he took, that he was actually doing it the right way. And I understand, obviously, and I too was upset, by the way, when we found out that Pomerantz was no longer working on the case and everyone thought the case was blown up. But I think history has been kind to Alvin Bragg and has not been super kind here to Pomerantz. But it's so true, because it's the ultimate rake stepping. And it's like, okay, you follow this through to the end of it, and what happens? Okay, if he does testify, you get Mark Pomerantz out there testifying before Congress about how guilty he thinks Donald Trump was, and that he thinks he should have been in prison last year. That's how you follow this through.
That's the ending of it.
Think that's the worst case scenario of what happens here if Jim Jordan gets his way, just so everybody knows what a genius this idiot is.
So if you say, well, why is Alvin Bragg even fighting it? Because the broader issue is state sovereignty, because the MAGA Republicans aren't just stopping with Pomerantz, right? They want to pry into all of the deliberative proceedings that are taking place within the grand jury. And so Alvin Bragg doesn't want to waive this argument that he just doesn't care if people who used to work for him or work for him are being called to testify, where Alvin Bragg argues there's no legitimate legislative purpose. And Jim Jordan argued the legitimate legislative purpose why the Judiciary Committee wants to get involved in this is because they're looking to pass a law that would basically make former presidents, that you couldn't prosecute former presidents for crimes, that they would get full immunity from any state crime, which, by the way, is patently unconstitutional. There's nobody above the law. And ultimately, what I found very interesting and quite revealing about the lack of logic in this Trump Judge Viscasel's order is on the first page of her order, referring to Pomerantz's testimony, she goes, nobody is above the law. Mark Pomerantz needs to testify. But then the justification, the federal hook about what the legislative purpose is an argument by Jim Jordan that former presidents are above the law. That's the very basis that they use to claim that the House of Representatives should be able to issue this subpoena, that you can't prosecute former presidents, which is patently unconstitutional. And then the judge, the lower court judge, and again, Alvin Bragg has appealed that, has basically said, look, it's not for me as a judge to look into anything further than what Jim Jordan basically tells me. Jim Jordan says they're interested in passing a law, so I don't have to dig deeper. It's not for a federal judge to actually question the intentions of the House committee, only that they've put forward a legitimate legislative purpose, where Alvin Bragg was like, that's not a legitimate purpose. That's illegal. And you can't use that as a pretext to pry into what we're doing in the states. So Alvin Bragg appealed this lower court order because the lower court order rejected Alvin Bragg's lawsuit against Jim Jordan, trying to stop Jim Jordan from deposing Pomerantz. And the lower court said, yeah, there is this legitimate legislative purpose. And then Alvin Bragg appealed that to the Second Circuit, which issued a temporary stay, which paused the deposition. So the deposition was supposed to take place April 20th. It's no longer taking place then. The Second Circuit's going to look through all of this information and make a ruling. And here's the thing too, though, and this is what the lower court federal judge said, which is why the testimony, though, is not going to be as dramatic as I discussed anyway, as it could have been. Because the judge was like, well, Pomerantz can still assert objections and privileges. So if they're trying to ask questions about grand jury secrecy, if they're trying to ask questions about confidential information within the district attorney's office, then Pomerantz can assert an objection on a case-by-case basis. So it's basically going to be Pomerantz just objecting the whole time, and it's just going to be a waste of time at the end of the day. And the whole thing is performative BS, but of course we'll keep everybody posted on what's going on there. And we got to talk about E. Jean Carroll's trial. Starts next week, and Donald Trump's lawyer wanted the judge to read an instruction to the jury that the reason that Donald Trump may not show up to his own trial, where he is a civil defendant in a rape case, is because Donald Trump wants to spare New York City the burden of all of the resources it would take and spare the court all of the resources. And Judge Lewis Kaplan was like, no, not only am I not going to read that instruction that you right now, but thanks for even making this an issue, because I'm now instructing you, Takapina, and Trump's lawyers, that you can't tell the jury that either. You can't tell the jury that Donald. So if they didn't bring this motion or didn't even say that, asking for the instruction, Takapina arguably during jury selection could have said, look, because you can't unring the bell once he says it, right? So he could have said to the jury, look, Trump's not showing up. And the reason Trump's not showing up is because we wanted to spare the city the burden. Total BS, but he at least could have said it. And then, by the way, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer could have said objection, but it would have been said already. But now, because Takapina even raised the issue, the judge says, yeah, I'm not going to say that. And by the way, you can't say it either right now. But it seems like Trump is not going to show up to this thing at all. Wow. He's a civil defendant, so it's not a criminal case. So he doesn't have to show up. If you're a party to a civil case, you don't have to be there, believe it or not. But it doesn't mean that the jury is not going to punish you for not showing up to your own trial, right? And so here, obviously, if there's an empty seat at the defense table and E. Jean Carroll's lawyers are going to put on the witness stand other victims who Donald Trump sexually assaulted, play the Access Hollywood tape, then they're going to play Donald Trump's deposition, and then they're going to call E. Jean Carroll, and then they're going to rest. That's basically their case. It may be a different order. And you may ask, Ben, is E. Jean Carroll's lawyers going to call Donald Trump to testify and force him to show up? No. And then you may go, Ben, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they call Donald Trump to testify? Haul his ass in there. E. Jean Carroll's lawyers are smarter than that. And here's what they realize. Donald Trump did horrible during his deposition, and you can play a party's deposition for any purpose during the trial. So all they're going to do, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to play for you Donald Trump's deposition. They're going to do that in their case in chief, and they're going to have the jury watch Donald Trump's deposition instead of his testimony. So then after they rest their case, then the defense has to put on evidence. So who's the defense going to call as their witness, right? So you basically force them that if they don't call Donald Trump as a witness, then you're going to say to the jury, look, they had the opportunity their client didn't even show up. They didn't even call their own client on direct exam. Then if they do call their client, just imagine trying to prepare a direct examination of Donald Trump, not a cross-examination. Takapina, you can't do leading questions. You have to ask Donald Trump questions on direct exam. You have to establish a foundation, which it's actually a skillful thing to do. And then after Trump gives what would likely be a horrific direct exam, then you still get to cross-examine him, do a cross-examination. So E. Jean Carroll's lawyer set a trap. That's why she did it that way. And it is a brilliant, it's a brilliant trap when you think about it like that.
It's just almost like unfair at this point. You just have like Donald Trump with all the attorneys in the world, every attorney in the world. This guy is a former president of the United States, and he has access to every attorney in the world. And I think it says everything that the attorneys that he ended up with are Joe Tacopina and Alina Habba. I mean, how absolutely embarrassing, how absolutely humiliating. And meanwhile, E. Jean Carroll has like one of the single best attorneys in the world with Roberta Kaplan. I loved Roberta Kaplan's line in her letter that she had filed where she just called Trump out. Like that excuse about, oh, we want to just make sure that the logistics of New York City are okay. She's like, bullshit. This is a direct quote. She said, if Mr. Trump can find a way to attend wrestling championships, political conventions, civil depositions, and campaign functions, then surely he could surmount the logistics of attending his own federal trial. Boom. Mic drop. I mean, it's just like, I would say it's like Little League going against the majors, but it's even like worse than that, you know?
And Trump's excuse doesn't even make any sense. It's like the ringleader complaining that there's a circus. Like it's all his fault.
It's so true.
All right,
so
Brett,
true.
you take us home with DeSantis, though, Brett. What's going on?
I forgot. This has been a good episode. I didn't realize we didn't hit DeSantis yet.
I love when we comment about how good our episodes are. While we're
great episode, guys. This is a terrific.
Give ourselves flowers while we can.
I know the Midas might agree. If you like this episode you're watching on YouTube, make sure to go right now, subscribe to the MeidasTouch Podcast on audio, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But anyway, folks, Ron DeSantis, I mean, I can't even like, it's hard for me to think back even to like a few months ago or like a year ago and think about like being worried about this guy's presidential ambitions.
I know, right?
Because it's just so embarrassing watching him on the campaign trail. Like I'm getting secondhand embarrassment watching the guy. He just has one disastrous week after another disastrous week. He's got donors fleeing him. He's got nobody endorsing him in his own state. Like this is extremely embarrassing stuff. But there are real consequences to the games that he is playing. So I want to take that part of it absolutely seriously because Florida, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, they had serious flooding last week from these storms. And when they needed help and they looked to their governor, where was Ron DeSantis? Ron DeSantis was in Ohio going, woke, I'm going to destroy the woke. I'm going to destroy the woke. Destroy the woke, folks. And people are like, dude, my car's underwater. What the hell are you talking about, man? And so that happens. That's followed by a severe gas crisis, a massive gas shortage in South Florida. Lines wrapped around the street for the few remaining gas stations that actually had fuel. I had people texting me who were down there. I got a lot of messages from people in Florida saying there's like one gas station anywhere, even in this part of the state, where I could even find gas. And they looked to Ron DeSantis. And where the hell is Ron DeSantis? Once again, he ain't in Florida. Ron DeSantis was in South Carolina. And in this one clip that I'll show you here for the listeners of this podcast, on the bottom of the split screen, you have the cars wrapped around the street trying to get gasoline in Florida. On the top, at the same time, you have Ron DeSantis giving his speech in South Carolina, where in a span of 20 seconds, he says woke, I believe, 7 times. And just listen to like, Ron DeSantis thinks this is like a winning speech. He thinks like, he's probably like, good job, buddy. Way to go. Listen to this and just try not to cringe.
So because the woke represents a war on truth, we have no other recourse but to wage a war on woke. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
What? Excuse me? It's like, dude, at least like make sure the lights are on in your state metaphorically or literally before you go on these deranged rants out of state about the woke, because you know what's dying in your state? The woke isn't dying. People are dying because of your stupidity, because of your policies. Focus on the basics of governing. Or is that too woke for you? Is it too woke to actually govern, to do the bare minimum of running a state? That's all you got to do. The bare minimum tasks. But he can't even do that. And meanwhile, like, there are all these other issues now that are stemming from it. I read the grossest study, and I apologize if you are eating right now. You might want to put down your fork, because this is a serious problem right now in Florida.
What if they're having soup?
What if you're having soup?
Yeah.
Put down your spoon, because it's pretty gross. Because these are the issues. Thanks for clarifying, Jordy, for the soup eaters out there, for the soup drink. But literally, this is what's happening right now in Florida. Fecal bacteria in some Florida canals in South Florida has skyrocketed to about 150 times beyond safe levels after the recent flooding. That's about
No shit.
No shit.
No,
shit.
A lot of shit.
A lot of shit. Massive shit. And that's about 40 times higher in these canals than one would expect to find if they tested the water in a used toilet. But don't worry, folks. Ron DeSantis is out there, out of state, talking about the woke. Woke. Dude can't even run the state. And then he has all these other kinds of issues happening.
Ron DeSantis is literally throwing feces on the people who live in Florida while he's out talking about woke in South Carolina.
He's literally turned his state into a cesspool. Legitimately turned his state into an actual cesspool. And then, like, this morning, there was this other weird thing where all these people in Florida were woken up by an emergency text message, a test, like when your phone goes off with like an Amber Alert or something. Everybody in the state who had their emergency alerts on was woken up at 4:50 in the morning by an emergency alert message. And then I looked up, like, I went on the Florida website that had like a list of like when these things are scheduled for. And it turns out they had them scheduled at 4:50 a.m. every other month. So they had one in February. Apparently they had one scheduled for June, for August, for October, to wake the citizens up at 4:50 a.m. I mean, that is just deranged right there. And of course, when it happens, people complain, what does DeSantis do? I'm going to get to the bottom of who did this. Like, the schedule's right there on your website, dude. Maybe if you were focused on your state, you could figure it out. Then, there's the gas crisis, as we were talking about before. And just to really sum up the incompetence of these Republicans, and especially what's going on in Florida, Marco Rubio, who has got to be the most useless person on the face of the earth, at least in the country. He does like a selfie video where he's complaining like, there's a real problem with this gas shortage down here and they need to do something about it. It's like, dude, you're the they. You're the freaking government. Ron DeSantis is who's the they that you're relying upon? Do your job. Just watch this video of like,
to be clear, this is the senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, complaining that he doesn't know why there are these issues in the state of Florida, which I would normally say, maybe you should call your state senator, but that's you. Play this clip.
What's happening right now in Miami and in Fort Lauderdale with gasoline is crazy. You can't find gasoline anywhere. This has been going on since Sunday, and they're blaming it on the floods that impacted the port. And I know that was a factor, but it's been 4 days. This should have been figured out by now. And they're blaming it on consumer panic. Yeah, people are panicked because they got to get to work. They got places to go. And you either can't find gas or you have to wait in line for like 2 hours down the street where you're probably going to run out of gas while you're waiting. So yeah, people are panicked. And of course they're filling up, saying don't fill up. Of course you're going to fill up because you don't want to the next time you're going to have to make a 2 hour line. And they keep saying it's going to get better, but it's not. They got to get this thing fixed. This is crazy.
They got to get this thing fixed. This is just utterly crazy. Do you think he knows what his job is? I don't think he knows what his job is. No.
They all think they're podcasters or vloggers and stuff. Like, you're a senator. Okay, we're podcasters here. We could comment on what's going on. Okay, you're supposed to be doing the work. I don't know who you're shouting out to. They need to fix this. They need to. You are the they. Ron DeSantis is the they. Look inward, buddy. Look inward.
The NBA playoffs are going on right now. Yeah. And so just to analogize this with sport, it's as if a coach looked at his team at halftime and said, hey, someone's got to figure this out. You guys aren't playing well today. I don't know. Someone's got coach, buddy. And the players look at him. You're the guy. You're the coach. What do you mean? Man, this is honestly,
I'd say it's pathetic, but it's far beyond that. Can we get into, if we're moving on? I want to make a point about DeSantis and his future.
We're moving on. Where are we going? Where are we moving on to?
Well, you're right. Are we at the end? We are kind of at the end.
I mean, we may be. Where do you want to move on to?
Well, all I want to say is DeSantis right now. I don't, and this is a little bit of a hot take. It's an opinion of one. I know the brothers don't necessarily agree with me on this one. I just don't see him running at this point for president. I don't think he has he obviously doesn't have the it factor, but he actually doesn't have the backing, nor does he have the infrastructure ready to sort of turn that key. And also, don't discount the fact that there's still the law down there in Florida that a sitting governor, they can't announce a presidential run without giving up the ownership of their governorship. And so he's got a lot of things sort of working against him there. I would not be shocked personally seeing how things continue to just totally play out against him on his own networks, on the Fox News of the world and across that MAGA-verse landscape, if he doesn't eventually run and put his hat in the ring for the GOP nominee.
Okay, so I'll start off by saying I agree with you. If he were a reasonable human being, he should not run. And it's set up that he will inevitably, if he does throw his hat in the ring, the guy is going to get crushed and humiliated. Now, where I'm not sure if your prediction will be true or not, it falls on two kind of main things. One, the guy is an extreme narcissist who craves power.
Great point.
That's number one. And he thinks, he's kind of has that Marjorie Taylor Greene syndrome, where because he won in a state with a lot of people who kind of support him and he's got a super majority and he's able to push through all these hateful bills easily because he doesn't need the tact of a politician to do it because it's all a layup for him. He thinks he's like the greatest on the planet, even though he's not a good politician at all. So he's got this arrogance. He's got this narcissism. That's one. Two, and this goes straight to your second point, Jay. He's kind of pulling an illegal campaign move right now. And by the way, Trump rightfully called him out. And here's what I mean by that. While he may not be raising money for his own political campaign because he is not declared, he's got a super PAC. And the super PAC is running ads against Trump and running ads against, he's putting their name out, running commercials. And the super PAC, he's coordinating with the super PAC. And that's illegal. But he's coordinating with the super PAC because he's not declared his candidacy yet. So he's in this gray area of the law right now where he's saying, I'm not a candidate. I could coordinate with the super PAC. They want to say nice things about me. That's all good. They want to raise all this money. That's perfectly fine. It's not me. It's them. So he's got this war chest. He's got these people working on his behalf. However, he's trying to kind of playing dumb and separating himself from it. So that's my kind of overall view in it. But Jordy, you're 100% right, because when you look at like the endorsements and stuff, nobody like even in Florida is endorsing him. And he keeps getting humiliated. Like he did this trip to DC where he thought he'd be greeted by like the Republican establishment as some sort of conquering hero. Yeah. Look, we have somebody who could, beat Trump and this guy could be in the lead. And then like everybody he meets with, like right after he meets with them is like, oh, that guy's horrible.
I'm endorsing Trump. I'm endorsing the other guy. Like imagine being that bad. And then the other thing too is if he does decide to take Trump on for that GOP nomination for the Republican nomination for president and loses his own state of Florida, which we said many times on the podcast, he will to Trump. Absolutely. There is no coming back from that. Yeah. No coming back from that.
And like, here's an example, Jordy. He met with this Republican Texas representative, Lance Gooden, immediately right after the meeting. The guy goes, yeah, I'm back at Trump. Like instantly. And
that's being so repulsive that the best next option is to endorse Donald Trump.
Dude, even the Florida, the representative guy, his name was like Greg Stobe or something, a Florida representative. He was complaining. It was all in this Politico piece. He was like, in the 5 years that I've been here or whatever, my 5 years of Congress, I've tried to reach out to DeSantis and his staff 1 billion times. I'm a congressman in Florida. He has not once returned my calls. He has not once talked to me. And now he wants my endorsement. I mean, this guy has zero political skill, zero political tact. He is just about as unlikable as Ted Cruz. Like, he really is just a repulsive human being when you meet him. Nobody actually likes the guy. And he thinks he's hot shit because he's in an easy situation right now, to be frank. But you see even Fox now kind of like turning on him. Like,
they're all turning on him.
You see
and,
people
and again, this is only a few weeks after they had the baseball catch with him.
The baseball catch.
They totally turned the tide there.
I'll just show you a quick example of this Larry Kudlow clip, who is, in the Trump administration.
Dude, what the hell was that baseball catch? I'm sorry, that was the weirdest programming thing in the entire world.
Yeah, Fox, they're all a bunch of weirdos, dude. They're all a bunch of weirdos. But look who they have Kudlow on Fox to just talk shit about DeSantis and his focus on woke and Disney. And they're like, yeah, Disney. They're basically just like, yeah, Disney's gonna kick DeSantis's ass. Watch this.
I just want to observe that Governor DeSantis is close to making a fool of himself with his Walt Disney obsession. This has been going on now for months and months and months, and I would argue that it is unseemly, number one. A governor should not come crashing down on, if not the biggest, one of the biggest business. I don't like Disney's politics either, their woke politics. My guess is Bob Iger is going to change that. But whatever. DeSantis should make a deal and stop already. He's not running against Walt Disney for president.
No, as we've been saying, he has no campaign skills. He can't debate and he can't negotiate. Donald Trump would be in a room with Disney working this out. DeSantis' problem was it was easy to slap Disney around. They had that dumb CEO, but he's gone. Iger is here. And DeSantis is no match for Iger, who's 10 steps ahead of DeSantis on every move.
Rough news for DeSantis when, even Fox sees the writing on the wall for you there. But that's the Republicans. I mean, we brought you through the Republican rake stepping in the House, through the courts, through the governorships, and through the media. And that's what you have here. Just a complete group of clowns, honestly, just across the board. But contrasted with actual leadership on the Democratic side, with people who are actually trying to help people, with people who actually don't want to torpedo the economy, but want to actually decrease the deficit, who want to have social programs that help the people who need them the most in this country. When you look at it and you see everything that's going on, to me, and I hope to everybody out there listening and watching, the contrast could not be clearer, and that's about it. Ben, any final?
I was just thinking, like, the way the Republicans are negotiating when it comes to like the debt ceiling, right? It would be like if you're trying to negotiate a raise with like your boss, right? And you basically tell your boss right away, "Are you going to give me a raise?" And the boss is like, "I'm open to the conversation. Like, let's talk about it. But I'd love to hear what you think." And then your response is, "I'm going to kill you." And your boss is like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm going to murder you if you don't give me." Well, could we take murder off the table, please? And then maybe we could have a rational conversation. I mean, that's just how they approach everything. I mean, it's not just, they're arsonists, they're professional rake steppers. And, and look, there are real ramifications to what they're doing. And I know they're so desensitized to death in their death cult. I know millions of people can die from a global pandemic, and then MAGA Republicans will be like, "Well, that's as dangerous as a fajita." It's like, what are you like? What are you talking? Like, it's like a real, like, we take global pandemics like seriously here. Like, they'll have a cousin die, and they'll be like, they won't even like discuss it. And they'll be like, "Well, yeah, it's not that dangerous." It's like, yeah, your cousin just died, or like your family member just died. Like, isn't that a shocking event in your life that maybe they should have got a vaccine or like taken things seriously, and then they just go on and they keep on saying it, and it's because it's like all a cosplay game to them, right? Yeah. Like they don't think through that there are real ramifications here, and there's the nefarious aspect of it too. Like, there are these MAGA Republicans who aid and abet Vladimir Putin. And then when they cosplay though, their whole view, it's like, okay, well, so at the end of your scenario, what? Putin then invades all of Europe. Like, if you take what you're saying to your logical conclusion, MAGA Republicans, the outcomes that you want would actually be like completely disastrous. The fact that you would threaten America to default on its full faith and credit, like just destroy the world. if destroy the world unless you're ridiculous, unless Pell Grants get eliminated. What? You're going to destroy the world unless Biden eliminates Pell Grants. You're going to destroy the world unless Biden removes access to the Head Start program. You're going to destroy the world unless Biden's student debt relief program doesn't take effect. You're going to destroy the world unless money isn't repealed from funding the IRS. And as Biden said, okay, you want to talk about your wacko ideas? Like, I'll talk about them, but let's fund our government first, and let's make sure that the debt ceiling raises, please, so that we could not default on our debt. So, Brett, I think going back to before, I think to your point, we covered all of the professional rake stepping at all of these levels, compared it to normalcy. And that's what this network's all about, what we're promoting at the end of the day. Normalcy, intelligence, humanity, compassion, and I think all of that's really true patriotism right there, right? Not performative stuff, just truly walking the walk and not just talking the talk, and doing the hard work and just be good people, folks. That's at the end of the day. Like, just be good, normal people. None of this Marjorie Taylor Greene, MAGA Republican, dangerous stuff. Everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode. Do us a favor, hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers here. If you just watch on YouTube, make sure you subscribe on audio as well, wherever you get audio podcasts. It's free. Just search MeidasTouch Podcast and subscribe on audio podcast. To all our audio podcast listeners, make sure you subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel and help us get to 1.5 million subscribers. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MEIDASTOUCH. That's patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We're not funded by outside investors, so one of the main ways we fund this is through our Patreon. There's even one tier where you could become an honorary producer of the show, and your name appears at the end of the show. Shout out to our honorary producers. Don't forget to check out store.MeidasTouch.com for all of the MeidasTouch gear, 100% made in the USA.
There it is.
100% union made. That's the dank Brandon in celebration of 420, I suppose, Jordy.
Absolutely. Happy 420 to all who celebrate.
And there's the indictment season shirt and so much more. That's store.MeidasTouch.com. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of the MeidasTouch Podcast. We will see you next week. Don't forget to check out Legal AF this weekend and Lights On with Jessica Denson tomorrow. We'll see you next time.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty.
Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment Season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.MeidasTouch.com.